system. I believe Three Rivers outsourced I got wind that they outsourced their gas system. So it's just something, again, that we, as a council, I would ask that you consider that in the near future. We don't anticipate a huge increase to water or wastewater or garbage rates. Additionally, the garbage fund will absorb about $35,000 in additional expenses for the disposal of the brush and tires. So we're estimating the brush that's out there currently now will run us around $30,000 yearly. And again, this is an estimate because we don't know how much it's truly going to cost. And the tire disposal, we'd like to do that, continue that yearly. We'll run about an additional $5,000 to have tires disposed on a yearly basis. Any future debt obligations, this thing that I mentioned to you as far as through the Water Development Board probably will require water or wastewater increases.
How did that tire recovery work out?
Well, actually, which is happening this month, it's happening in May. We actually have, no, sir, the disposal will be in May, and what we did last, 2 years ago, we disposed of tires, but a lot of the tires, we had a lot of them out at the, not the transfer station, at the service center. We had a lot of those tires were tires that we picked up from, illegal dumping.
Right.
And that's kind of what we even have now, is we still have tires that we find and think, well, how does the city build up so many tires? That's not the case. We don't go through that many vehicles. But we do find the illegal dumping, and so we could help the illegal dumping and do this once a year. I mean, it's costing us anyway, and we gotta figure out what to do with the tires. So that's what we're gonna try to do on a yearly basis, and hopefully this thing is successful. We have tires. I don't know how many tires we have, but we have tires to fill some of that truck up. So don't think that even if people don't show up, we will have tires to put in there.
Well, they'll show up because it costs $10 to get rid of a tire.
Is that
Won't exist anywhere else.
Oh, I didn't know that.
It does. And so with that in mind, I mean, couldn't we charge people just a little something for each tire?
I would like to, again, propose to the council on that, in there, some sort of, we're trying to apply it just to people that actually receive a bill, right? We don't want to let just anybody. And so on that end, I don't know if you want to see something on the bill or something, just a flat fee there. Our challenge sometimes there at the collection side is like, my preference is to put it on a bill as opposed to putting it, even if it's $1 a month, I don't know what the amount is, right? And just to put it on a bill, maybe that's the better alternative than to collect it out of the station. Because it's really the people that are paying for it are the rate customers. It's really being paid by us, the customers. So we can look at that, yes, sir. Again, some of the positive things, and if you look at part of what we put in here, and I just to be brief on your debt schedule. This is part of what finance puts together. In the next 5 years, you should, and I think I underestimated that number, you should extinguish about close to $1 million in debt payments per year. So if you look at your debt schedule, assuming we don't refinance anything, you stand to extinguish a significant amount of debt. Now that will open you up for one or two things, either decreasing rates, which may be something that may be new for people, or moving forward with projects, and meaning you use that money to just keep working on projects. So anyway, that's in a nutshell. One thing our goal and still is to build a fund balance of about $3 million. That's our goal. I mean, she doesn't know this year, but yes, that's our goal. So part of what we need to do on that end is again, make sure that some of the financials and reporting are accurate and consistent to what we're trying to accomplish. And part of that, Mayor and I discussed that is that do we need to be more timely and accurate with some of the postings and stuff? Yes, and sometimes I get a little concerned, right? But I do feel a lot better as far as our financial position now than I have in some time. And so I will say that I anticipate a better fund balance this fiscal year at the end of our audit. I will say that I anticipate we're gonna take a hit in 2022 when that audit goes out. And the reason for that is because of some of the refunding we need to do to pay, the step back to the refund. But I anticipate us doing better. Again, the goal is to have 3 months of operating expenses. It isn't a lot of money in my opinion, but it's 3 months nonetheless. And what I looked at, other thing I looked at in the issuance of 2020, 2012 debt bond is most of the debt that was issued in 2012, 2016, 2014, most of it was for basic work. I mean, it was basic water, sewer, and whether you were part of the 2016 bond issuance or 2012 bond issuance, most of it was basic services. And that's why I wanted to highlight the very bottom there, is it wasn't anything to where, again, this building was built with insurance money for the most part. Police department was built as part of the 2012 bond package, but aside from those projects, everything else was water, sewer, streets, for the most part. So I just want to make sure you point that out, that those debt issuances are and have been primarily for that type of work. Can you go to the next one, Kristen? I think that's. I think the mayor had asked this, and it's a good point on the impact of inflation, and it is going to hit us on some of our. The way it impacts us is several ways, but primarily the issuance of debt, the interest rates are going up. As inflation is a way to control inflation, of course, interest rates go up. So we're anticipating the refinancing. I think we talked some months back. I don't remember when Dana came in here, but he came in here at least 6 months ago. Part of what hurt us is this whole idea of interest rates not meeting the savings requirements that we needed. We don't anticipate that savings to be there now, especially because of the increase in interest rates. So that's one of the ways that it hurts us. So we're not. Again, if we issue more debt, we can anticipate. We're anticipating higher interest rates in the open market. The good thing for us is because we're a governmental entity through the Water Development Board and through some of these other agencies, because of this the infrastructure plan, the $1.2 trillion. What we're understanding, again, this is preliminary, is that there's the financing or the interest rates should be lower going through a state agency to borrow money. The state, in that particular, is the Water Development Board to borrow money, and even at that, I think what they're talking is also loan forgiveness. We don't have numbers yet as far as what we're still considered, from what I'm understanding from our consultants, we're considered a disadvantaged community. So by recognizing this as a disadvantaged community, there is an opportunity for loan forgiveness. And so let's assume you borrow $10 million and from the Water Development Board, and they gave you a loan forgiveness of 50 or 70% of that money, which is what we're shooting for. You can only imagine that's a significant amount of money that you're not going to have to pay back. So that's what our goal is. That's what we're going to shoot for. I hope the council's supportive of that. Our other things are cost is basic cost, material cost, road aggregate, fuel, surcharges for material has to be delivered, plumbing material, other fuel itself. I think we're looking at our fuel budget, and it's a lot. Fuel is really aiding to our budget this year. So we're gonna have to figure out a way to cut travel, maybe other operating expenses to try to balance that out for this coming year. Because we just can't. The price of fuel we don't anticipate decreasing anytime soon, and any of these other materials that we'll need, we don't anticipate decreases. So anything else?
So council, the good news is.
What you got?
The good news is, in a nutshell, thank you, Fred. Just briefly, and what we want to stick in our minds is what it takes us to operate. We're a $12 million city. I say roughly $2 million is debt service, but it's really 1.7. But it takes us about $10 million to operate. We're going to take a really big hit from STEP, about $600,000. Utility rates are going to increase a little bit, so we've got some real challenges that the thing that, you know, Fred's and reading at other audits, you know, we have as a council for years back said we'd really like to have about 3 months operating in a reserve, and we don't have that. And, you know, it's hard to, with, you know, the only way that we're gonna be able to do this is by either increasing rates or increasing taxes, and I know this council is really, you know, not the direction that we wanna head. Certainly it's an option, and certainly we'll talk about it, but we just have to understand today where we're headed, and again, the debt structure. The really cool thing is it's short term. In 5 years, you know, we paid the 1.7, $1 million's gonna be gone, but we gotta hang on for 5 years in order to get that out of the way. The advantage of refinancing that is it takes that 1.7, let's say the 1.2, and it'll build in another $500,000 in our budget. So that's a tool that we can look at, and we may need to do that. We don't really have a choice. We have to put that water line, most likely that sewer line, up I-35. Probably 4, 5, 6, 7 million, I don't know, it will have to borrow the money. So borrowing is most likely in our future at some point, this year, next year, most likely. Because again, if we don't do that, we're gonna hit against the wall where we said we would do that in order to annex those things. So you can see, looking at those numbers, we're gonna have to come up with another 500,000 or 600,000 somewhere to make that additional debt service. Just creates those challenges. Now, the really cool thing is we'll know, and we can dovetail on this, with the passing of the infrastructure bill, we may get to borrow, let's just say it's $7 million, and we may have to make, you know, 30% of those payments, and then they forgive that, and we'll know that up front. So all those things, you know, it's, you know, it is a tool that we can put in our tool chest in order to move forward. But really, the difficult thing that we've really got some challenges, and we need to try to think outside the box. I mean, it's just like Fred said, when we cut staff, you know, that's gonna mean our service is gonna be cut to a certain degree. You know, my question would always be to council and everybody else is, guys, we need to tighten our belt. You need to find some savings in each one of your departments, and we should be doing that. But at some point, like, you know, the advantage, terrible thing about the pandemic, but there was 13 or 14 positions that went away that we just didn't fill, but we weren't super busy because it wasn't the pandemic. And that really helped the budget because we didn't have to pay those salaries. But as we continue to roll on in traditional fashion, when we drop salary, we drop employees, that means to a certain degree we drop service. And we have to understand that. So a key component again today is understanding what these issues are as we move forward and be thinking about what we can do to meet these obligations. Opinion, I don't believe we're at the end of inflation. Inflation is roughly 8.4%, something like that. I can tell you that's not actual inflation. Gas has gone up 30 or 40%. Who knows what it is, but probably true inflation is 12 or 14 or 15%. And so we're seeing that, and as we move forward, we're gonna give you reports that we can really get into the weeds and see where we are year to date, so on and so forth, once we get our audit done. But I'm afraid we're gonna see that inflation is gonna pay a pretty heavy toll on our operating expenses. So, the good news is we're talking about it early, you know, and we're getting prepared for these challenges, because it's gonna be literally some challenges. It's not a challenge that's specific to us. I wish we didn't have that debt. That would make things a lot easier, but it was. It is something that we have, and so we can't look at that. We gotta look at realistic options in order for us to move forward with these things. One of the things that I wanted to bring up to your attention, and I know that you guys are kind of aware of this, but one of the problems that we have, and Jackie and Fred can highlight this, is we have a really large account receivable that we're carrying on our financial statement. Jackie, it's about 1.6, okay? Now, what this is largely, and we'll be able to substantiate this to you. This is a very old account receivable. It's very old. It goes back to as much as
1989.
1989. And these are people that are deceased or gone or moved or whatever. And so we're going to have to basically, I'm gonna use the term from a banking world, charge that off. So it's an asset on our balance sheet, and it's an asset that is basically worthless. So when you charge that off, you charge that to earnings. You know, we don't make money, we balance our budget typically, I mean, it's right, whatever we spend, what we lose. But the year that we charge off 1.6 million, Jackie, what's it gonna look like? We're gonna have a loss of $1.6 million. It's unavoidable. But we need to understand where that came from. It didn't come from operating loss. It came from us sending out bills, they not getting paid, and we put them in account receivables, and it grows up. Now, folks, a catalyst to this that is happening currently is we require a deposit for our utility customers. That deposit is not sufficient to cover the last 2 months' bills, and we are getting, I'm gonna use the word stiff, because that's what it is. They're leaving and they're not paying their bills. And so the deposit doesn't anywhere come close to, and it's like taking a deck of cards going, it just keeps adding to that account receivable. So, two things, we're going to have to address that deposit, which again may not be popular, but we're getting hammered, and we'll provide you the receipts to back that up. So we gotta address that, and then we're gonna have to address that deposit, probably year-end 2022 or year-end 2023. And so you guys need to be aware that that's coming. We have to, we can't keep carrying that on our books because it's not that. Council, question?
So if that deposit is owed to the city,
Correct.
when you address it as a council, as a city, how are you going to be losing that if you never had it?
No, because it's an account receivable. It's something, when someone owes you money, that's an asset. If I owe you $20, that's an asset, you know, and anyway, from a banking world, it's valuable.
So it's being counted as an asset?
It is an asset on our balance sheet, it's an asset.
The
It's because,
subsidies are gonna pay you back.
but typically too, in a real world, after an account receivable becomes 90 days old, it depreciates in value because your likelihood of collecting that grows minimum. And then like 180 days, it's almost uncollectible, but we have been since '89, and we can give you a list of all those folks, you know, that have added to that, and it's a compilation of multiple different things, but it's largely our deposits that we've been eating all these years. And so we need to address that. You will see that, and you'll see what the catalyst is, and then we need to address that. But yes, from when our accountant comes down, we can ask them specifically to walk you through that so you understand what that is. But again, it's an asset that we can't carry soon. So that's coming, and that's the not good news, because it's gonna make our audit look ugly. But it's not, again, technically, I mean, it's not an operating loss because our budget was within balance, but we lost on that asset. We can't hold it any longer. But it is a good question, and I do understand how your question, how could that be, but we'll get our accountant to walk us through that.
I think the biggest challenge moving forward is going to be trying to enforce policies and procedures and fines, dues, or whatever we have in place, because it seems like people are just not wanting to follow through and pay. And, I mean, as a result, you know, city
Yes.
is now everywhere.
I can't agree anymore.
So that's the biggest challenge really, is
Yeah.
how do you forcefully or say, hey, we're gonna cut your gas off, we're gonna cut your water off,
Yeah.
no matter
Amen.
what.
And the city is working on, you guys know, and I'll give you just a second, but the pandemic hurt in that regard because we stopped collecting. And people just took advantage of that to a certain degree, but we are being more resilient now, and we do. Councilor Hernandez and others, we can do a better job.
With our active accounts, currently, with the active accounts, we are constantly looking at the 60 days and 90 days. We don't want anything to go over the 90 days. So that's what we've been doing, disconnect notices. We've been running those reports every 2 weeks now. to keep up with that, because like he said, once it hits the 120, it starts to get hard on collecting it.
And one of the things that we haven't done before, but now we're using driver license.
Yes.
And you know, someone come open a name of Johnny, and then another child will come in on the name of Sally, and you know, so we're using driver's license so that we can cross-reference, hey, you owe us $130 from 1997, so pay up if you wanna open up a new account. So we're doing a little better job on the front end so we can protect it on the back end. But we'll get that data to you, but this is another thing that